Hello everyone. Let's wait some time till the others come. Maybe more people will come. Right, lesson 4. God damn it. Thanks, fixed. Yes, Roloff, you are on time. Still, this thing is in the way. Oh. So, okay, so if I put my mouse down, it disappears. Okay. Interesting. Silly, but interesting. Okay. So can you hear me guys well? Is everything fine? Is the quality good? Okay. So I guess we can start. The purpose of this lesson is to familiarize you with logical statements, with if statements, with how you can combine logical conditions, with how you can check things, how can you compare things, some tips on how to avoid the madness that the if statements can cause in terms of the nesting, and other pitfalls that you might think it works, but it doesn't. So let's go. So the agenda is if syntax, comparisons. We'll talk more about Boolean type this time, about combining logical statements, about scope reduction tricks, switch statement, tryparse, string comparison. So I hope it will be useful and you'll enjoy it. So the basic flow of if statement is basically a branching logic into one or more parts. And here you can see a kind of a flow chart, how it works. So we check on condition, and if condition is true, we execute code that is in the if block. And if it's false, we execute code that's in else block, though else block might not always exist. And then we end up executing the rest of our code after if statement gets evaluated. So the most simple example, if condition, and we do something inside. Note here that condition is not having a comparison to true, because condition here is a bool already. So there is no need to say that a bool is true on top of this, because it is already true or false. So Boolean is a variable that stores one of two values, true or false. And it's quite simple, and it's not much to say about it other than you should name it with prefixing it with is prefix, or use past tense. So is something, or enabled, gone, disabled, and so on. Both are commonly used, both naming patterns. How do we compare things? It's quite simple. Just like you would compare in maths, and the only exception is the equal sign. I think that's the biggest part where people might mix themselves. To compare if values are equal, we use equals operator, which is not a single equality sign, but it's double equality sign. And in fact, in other languages, it's triple equality sign, like JavaScript. But in C#, double equality sign is enough to compare if two values are equal. Int a equals 1. Bar is in front of the var. Don't get it? Carry on. So here are the examples of comparisons. Can't see declaration of A. Oh, okay. I'll minimize, I don't know why. Oh, you mean the bar. Okay, sorry, I'll minimize it like this. Yes. So here are the values. A equals 0 and B equals 1. So let's view it again. A equals 0, B equals 1. So A equals A, that's always true. A equals B, no, because A is 0 and B is 1. So it will give false. Crap. This one supposed to be B. I made a mistake. No, that one is not true. This one is false. A is less than A will be false, of course. And for every value like this. Present. Sorry, really sorry about that one. So A equals B, no, they're not equal, so it's false. A is not equal to B, true, because 0 is not equal 1. Name 1 equals name 2, that's true. And this one is not true, this one is false. And if it was B, I meant to put B there, so A is less than B, that is true. So I meant to put B there. And B more equal than A, that's true. So I guess points of interest is this one, double equality operator, and where you put more equal sign, or you put equality sign when you check if it's more or less and equals at the same time. So you put it after the more or less sign. And not equals in some languages is written like more or less, but in C# it's exclamation mark and equality sign. So those are the points of interest, really. Nothing much here, nothing complex. And then here is the Boolean algebra that you should know. But again, I think it's all logical, so just need to think about it. No need to memorize it, probably. Here I try to mention all the possible combinations. So here goes. We have yes and no variables. So yes is true and no is false. Oh, come on. Okay, yes and yes is true. Yes, that's correct. Good note. Yes and no is false. No and no is false. Yes and yes is true. Well, it's obvious. Yes and no is false because it's like playing with multiplication or division in maths. If you take a negative number and multiply it by another negative number, you will get a positive number. So So yes. Also, nice mention, Zach. And yes, it's a truth table, pretty much. So no and no is false, no and or yes is true, no or no is false, not no is true, not yes is false. And if we want to invert a combo of conditions, we need brackets. And lastly, just it's very similar to multiplication maths. The same rules goes. Order doesn't really matter. And if we use brackets, we can inverse this whole statement. So we first do the thing in brackets, and then we inverse the result. So yes and no is no, false, and reverse of that is true. And then true inversed is false. So right after the lesson, I'll fix this one, and I'll fix this one. Now some tips and tricks. With if statements, no and no is false because how to explain it? Yeah, the end result that matters to you is yes. How can you get yes? Like, what's the chance that you can get yes? If you say yes and yes, obviously it's a yes. If you say yes and no, that means no. If you say no and no, that's always no. So what Catgirl said, it's based on a guarantee of getting true or false. So with if statements, we might be able to, well, we might face problems like nesting too many statements in it, having a large scope, and this is actually quite common for if statements. You see here we have a comparison. If a equals b, and then if a is more than 0, all states, like all comparisons are valid. This is not gibberish. This might happen in real code. And then you compare names, and then if name 1 is Kai, you say that lesson started, for example. So this whole thing can be refactored into just again, this is not full example. The whole thing can be refactored into a similar thing. The point here, combine those two with end statement and those two with end statement again, and use a return statement for canceling the if statement, for not needing the else statement. I'll in live coding I'll give better examples. Sometimes we have lots of value comparisons. For example, here we compare a name to something else. So here a name equals Kai, a name equals Julian, a name equals a minus sign, and then else we say it's unidentified lesson. And we do different things when a value equals to something specific. So when we have a specific value comparison, like here, we should prefer doing it a bit differently. If this style works. And for it to be false for an OR, all inputs needs to be false for the output to be false. Yes. So in switch statement, for many if cases, for a single value comparison, it's better, more cleaner to use a switch statement, which looks like this. So the parts of switch statement, you say switch, and then the thing that you switch. So the part that we don't redundantly compare is, we don't say constantly that name has to be equal Kai, Julian, or minus. Instead, we can say case Kai. So this whole block is equivalent to the one on the left. Key points. The semantics of switch statement is you have switch keyword, and then in brackets a value, and then you open scope, and within that scope you say case, a bunch of cases, and you end the case not with brackets. You don't start scope with brackets, but you start it with a case keyword, and you say what value it is after case that you're comparing to, and then you put double brackets. I don't know the English word for it. 2 dots, let's say, and after that you do something in between, and colon. Okay, yes, semicolon, colon. So you put colon, and then you do something in between, and you basically close the thing that you do or end the scope with a break statement. So this is considered more readable in this case. For me, both are not the best. Okay. So if you compare a single value, use switch statement, and if there are many comparisons for that single value, 3 or more is worth considering using a switch statement. In previous homeworks, someone already used a Tryparse instead of just parse, and when we were trying to parse our numbers, so far we have been using happy paths only. So for parsing numbers, if we input letter A, it will fail, but it will fail by crashing our application, by throwing an exception, because A cannot be converted to a number. So there's a better way of doing it, and it's called Tryparse. With Tryparse, we can get a result. So with Tryparse, we can get a result if the parse succeeded. So we get two things, if it succeeded and the result. Don't pay attention too much to the out keyword. For now, just consider that it returns two values. So it returns is number, true or false, and the number, result. So that's how you write a Tryparse. In Tryparse, you put input and you out the result. You can declare the result within the out by putting int all the way there. So it's kind of not needed 100%. So yes, Tryparse is your friend. Use it for parsing, unless you explicitly want to not hide your if statement fails, parse fails. Another interesting check for string comparisons. If you want to compare if string is null or if it's empty. Null is a concept when there is no value set. It's not empty, but it had never had a value. For example, if you declare a string but don't give it a value, its value will be null. So you usually want to compare both things to check if string is null or if it's empty. And this line right here, you will use it a lot in your code. I can guarantee you that. If you work with strings, you will use this. Obviously, you could write the check manually, but it's way less readable than the following line. And on top of that, you might get it wrong, because in this case, I first say that I compare input to an empty string, and then I compare it to null, and actually this should have been or and not and sign. So the problem here is that the way comparison works for AND, it means that I first compare for and or. So I first compare left side, and if left side is false, I don't need to compare right side. So in this case, if my string is null, it will throw an exception. So don't do this manually, use this one. Is string is null or empty for checking if string is empty or is null. And another pitfall that you might fall into is comparing inputs, comparing strings. So if you just compare strings like this, there are some edge cases where you will eventually face a scenario where imagine input 1 and input 2 are having the same text, like A, non-capital A, but input 1 and input 2 might not be equal if you compare them like this. So it's a thing to be aware of. For 99% of cases, this will work. But for that 1% of cases, a better comparison would be with string.equals. I won't go too much in detail as it's way out of scope of this lesson, but if you want to learn more about it, please refer to the link in the slide. It's a Stack Overflow post. And it should be good. Read if you want to, absolutely optional. Just reason why you should use this over this. Alright, so this is it for theory, and now let's practice this to do something. Does anyone have any questions? Because I think this lesson will be probably shorter because it's fairly easy, I think. Okay, I'll go ahead and ask Ujabaya. Parse H, for example. Okay, so for example, we need to parse H. Oh, yes, sure. In future lessons, I'll try to do that. All right, thanks for suggestion. So we need to parse age from an input string, or in other words, yeah, age is fine. So the things we need to check, is it an int? And is it less than 200? Is it more than 0? And that's pretty much it. And also maybe, yeah, that's pretty much it. So we start from string, from int dot, yeah, or equals 0, yeah. So we start from Tryparse, of course, and we pass in input. And I will zoom in because there's no point to waste so much screen. And like I said, you can out and declare the variable you out. So you out number, age, and we get the result is number. So, and in programming, when you have opportunities or possibilities to terminate your function, or a choice when you terminate it, you should terminate it as soon as you can if it's not valid. So instead of saying that if it is number and then doing logic, if age is less than 200 and so on, instead of doing this, you should just say if it's not a number, let's say invalid one will be -1. So if it's not a number, you return -1. And then I no longer need to have nested logic. I immediately terminate and continue with other cases. So, I mean, this is checked. So if age is more than 200, again, it cannot be more than 200, but I might as well just combo it with this one. And if it's less than 0, we say that it's also invalid. And otherwise we return the number that was age, that was parsed. So if I didn't return immediately, I would have nested this. So here's the thing, the question, why doesn't return need brackets? Most of things in C# that are a single expression don't have to be with brackets. But I mean, if you add brackets, it will of course work. So I could have put this one without brackets as well. Which for some people is more readable, for some people it's less readable. General preference is to put it. I personally prefer not to put it for a single one if it's very simple. So for a single line of code, brackets are optional. Also, so we should illustrate that. If you can, terminate function early. So there's a general rule: fail early, return early. If you can, please do. Right, so we parsed H. Being forced to work with VB6 legacy code, I tend to like the brackets for one-liners actually, even though that might be bad, I think. A bad habit. It's not a bad habit. I'm 50% for it, 50% against it. It's really fine and up to preference. Just keep it consistent. As long as it's short, I think it's fine. If it's longer line, then it's not fine. But consistency and whatever makes your code more readable. This is not unreadable, I think is fine. Yeah. So if parse H, so what do we do here? Let's say we check the H. So we set H, parse H, and we pass in input. So input, and we say console.readline. And here we say input. And here we say H. If, let's say, H is -1, we say H is invalid, else H is, I won't write that one, is H. Could you combine both if statements? If is number or H? Yes, but it would make the code less readable. And this is also fine. I mean, this is a single logical comparison. So, I mean, first I check if it's not a number, and then I check if it's in the range. If I put it in separate ones, it would be less readable, I think. Unnecessarily split. But all those things are checking their own different concept. Here I check if it's not a number, and here I check if it's in range. And sometimes when condition is longer, you can even write something like this. So is valid H, and you can do something like this. And then it's very readable. So it's not. So I need to inverse this. So if it's less than 200 and more equals 0, is valid H. So if it's not valid H, I return -1. In this case now I could combine it, and probably this one now makes sense. But H, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. So I don't even need this one, actually. No, I do need that one. Yeah. That one was fine. That one was fine. I am undoing this because I still need this -1. If it's not a number, by default it will be 0. And this comparison will pass and will be just wrong. What nowhere said is not good, because, I mean, otherwise I would have to do this. I don't want that. This is not bad, but I mean, repeating yourself, inverting the condition is bad. So, I mean, if I write not, I can write then without this exclamation mark. But then I would still need to invert this here. So, I mean, don't inherently avoid things that don't matter that much. I mean, this is not bad. This is readable. You basically read it as, if it's not a valid age, you return -1. If it's not a number, you return -1. So if age is between 200 and 0, it's a valid age. Okay, so we parse the age. Again, nowhere is suggesting to use an else statement. I disagree. I prefer not to use else statement, because here we return and here we terminate the function. So we don't need to care about branching anymore. It's just a single flow, and at this point it just terminates. So there isn't any branching, it just stops. So it's cleaner not to use else if you can. I could have used an else statement here, but I don't have to, because I returned and the function stopped right here. It returned back to this place. And here I would like to show one more thing. So here we have age. If age equals -1, we say age is invalid, and otherwise we say that, well, what age is. Let's see if it works. I'm pasting stuff. So we input age. Let's say we input 15. Age is 15. Okay. Let's try again. We input -5, and we say age is invalid. Okay. Good. So now we're kind of repeating ourselves, because what bit are we repeating? We're repeating the bit that says console.writeLine. Also, we're repeating the bit that says age is, because the only difference that -1 makes is if age is invalid or if we actually print an age. So instead of doing all this, we can extract the bits that are similar. Let's do that. So string age value, for example, and we say if it's -1, it's invalid, and if it is the other one, we say it's age string. And in the end, we say age is plus age value. What I did here for this specific case is definitely an overkill, but it reduces code duplication. For example, if we changed how we print the age, or whether to a console in a single line or in a write line or a different message right here, we would do it in a single place right here instead of two places. Readability wise, this is slightly worse, I think, than the previous one. That's why I said it's an overkill. But, well, it's a way to just extract the difference and base it on the if statement. Right. So remember when I said that that we do combinations using and not this one. But the thing is, we can combo things with this one as well. But there is a slight difference, and I probably shouldn't be saying that one yet. So in general, don't use this one. Use this one, and I'll explain this one when we start playing around with object-oriented programming. Actually, okay. I can demo it fast, so never mind. Static bool is let's say check 1. And static bool check 2. Horrible naming, don't mind that. And here we return true. Here we return true as well. True. We return here false actually. Okay. So I'll show you the difference. And when we do check 1, we print that it's check 1. And when we do check 2, we print that it's check 2. So we say if check 1 and check 2, we don't care. And the other one, if check 1 and check 2, we'll see the difference. So the difference here is in this one, if check 1 is false, it's enough to cancel out this one. So if check 1 is false, this one won't be checked. So like nowhere mentioned, it will short circuit. And in this one, if check 1 is false, it will check this one regardless. And there are super rare cases where this would make sense. I actually don't know any practical cases, and that's why you don't see this one much in practice. So if I run this now, if I comment this one out and just run this one, you will see that in this case, it will just print check 1. And in the other case, it will print both check 1 and check 2. So here you go. Okay. So use a return to minimize scope. Tryparse equality. Okay. Let's uncomment this one. I guess let's demo the switch statement. How do I do what in one click? The comments? So Control plus K C will comment everything. Control plus K U will uncomment everything. Oh crap. Useful keybind. Okay, so let's say we want yes, you will. Though today's lesson, as you can see already, is pretty bad quality, so I'm ashamed of the poor quality. But I really was tight on time, so not an excuse. I'm sorry for that. All right. What do we need to do now? We want to demonstrate a bunch of values. So let's say we read something from console. Well, I'll hard code it. Though I demonstrated that in the slides already, so I don't think there is a point to demonstrate switch statement in the code. You'll see that in the slides. This lesson is really trivial. Do you guys have any questions maybe? Something confusing? Is anything confusing? Because this is quite simple, and to go deeper into this, I cannot really. Well, okay. Do you guys know how to quickly check if it's true or false? So let's say result is true, and if I say result is not result, is this true or false? So let's calculate how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it's quite easy to figure this one out. Basically, if you have 0 or even number of those exclamation marks for something that was true, it will remain true. But if it's uneven, then it will be inverted. So yes, this one will be false. So if I run this, it will be false. Though this is absolutely redundant, I mean, at most you would just need this one. Yeah, I think it's just delaying time for no reason, and this is enough what we have. So let's move to Kahoot. And for homework, yeah, it will be an interesting homework, I think. So here is a number for the room and Kahoot link. Come on, 8 players. I'll wait half a minute more and we'll start. So as we wait, the next homework, actually the most of my effort for this lesson went into the homework. So it should be an interesting homework. Resho is the person who won the first 2 lessons. This is the person who won the 3rd one. Alright, I guess we can start. Let's go. He's there, don't worry. He'll get you. So, this question type has 2 possible answers, which are a bool. Is this true or false? I mean, this question answer has either true or false, so the answer is a Boolean, so it's a Boolean. It's a kind of tricky question, but since 8 people answer true, I presume that it's figurable. Okay, next. Which of the following cannot be used to check equality? Okay, good. So var number equals true, and what is hiding under var? What type is var? For variable called number. And someone might have picked and fell into my trap for naming variable as number. But this number is actually true or false. So it's a Boolean. Don't judge it based on the name. Yes. A and B are bools. To invert A and B, what do you do? I think I'll skip. One person is not answering. Okay. Never mind. Good. Yeah. Well done. This again, bracket needed because otherwise you invert only A and not both. If and is that, then or is which sign? Okay, too easy. True and false will result in not true. I mean, you cannot have both true and false. True or false equals to what? Yep. So we double invert false. What do we get? Even number means it doesn't change at all. So it's still false. And cat girl, again, number 1. What's wrong with this kind of written string comparison? Or is anything wrong with it? And the bit that is wrong is that if text is null in here, it will throw an exception. So it will not work. It needs to be swapped, and even then it needs to be ORed and not AND, so it's just wrong. Last question. Yes, good. Let's see the winners. Well done, we have a new winner. Uja Bacha, I don't know how to pronounce that. Okay, now for the homework this time. I don't have a fully written homework task yet, but I have a homework branch and tests written already. So if you give me 10 minutes, I can write the homework and post it. So first, I guess I can open the branch, the homework branch. And the homework branch. And you can start forking it and looking at it. Okay. Yes. It returns null. Sorry again for really poor quality lesson. I feel bad for all the mistakes and being out of focus. All right. Homework. Homework. Oh, the next lesson will be about collections, about storing multiple variables into a single place. And so we'll also talk about loops, all sorts of loops, how to iterate through a collection, how to add elements to collection, how to check how many times we need to loop, how to nest loops. So for, while, do while, for each loops, arrays and lists, and yeah, that's all for the next one. Thank you all guys for watching. So I'll end the stream now and I'll post the homework in around 5 minutes to finish the formulation of task. You don't see the branch in VS because you need to refork it. You need to refork it or you need to set a different upstream branch. The latter is a bit more difficult, so you might just refork it. But if you have your homework complete, the other one. So I guess if you did complete it, then you can set a different upstream branch. Is there a way to refork something without deleting my homework free branch? The answer is yes, and set the upstream branch. You can Google that up, how to set upstream branch in Visual Studio. If you have problems, I'll help. The problem with that approach is that you won't have a proper remote repository. I think it worked for someone. I didn't try it personally. But you can always just keep on stacking your homework in a different place. I guess have a different repository where you store it, your own branches, and then another repository for just forking. All right, see you guys later on Saturday. And have fun working, learning, studying. Bye-bye.